Okay, it feels like it's been a while since I made a video. When was the last time I made a... Oh, okay. Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a month. Well, I'm back. You know, life gets in the way sometimes. But I came back just in time for the monthly CD haul where I go through all the CDs I acquired throughout the month of June. So, it's actually funny because usually I get quite a big haul. Usually it's somewhere in the 30s, but this month in particular I actually didn't get as much because, again, I've been busy and I just didn't want to overwhelm myself this time around, you know. And I did listen to a majority of them. There's a few that I didn't get time to, but I did at least started them or heard the first half of them at least. And I'll let you know as we go along. But of course, if you enjoy these monthly CD hauls, please give this a like, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and without further ado, let's just jump right into it. Kicking the CD haul, we have Young Lions by Adrien. Now, I know there's a good chunk of people who have no idea who Adrien is, but if you're a King Crimson fan, you should be familiar with him because he was, at some point, their lead singer, especially during the 80s period. And I have one album with Adrien on vocals, and that is Discipline, and I really enjoyed Discipline. And so I kind of saw this at a record store, and I'm like, okay, I should probably give it a try. And I didn't get a chance to listen to the whole thing, but I listened to the first half. And for the most part, pretty good. I'm quite enjoying it. Again, it has that sort of like not post-punk, but kind of new wavy, has a sort of Talking Heads feel, very unique arrangements, which is kind of interesting. And you know, the first song I heard was the title track, and that was a pretty good way to kind of set the tone for the album. But then you have Pretty Pink Rose, and what's interesting is that you have David Bowie actually singing on this track. So kind of interesting how that came about. Heartbeat, I enjoyed that one. Looking for a UFO is kind of interesting. I Am What I Am, and that's kind of where I kind of paused. I haven't heard the second half yet, but for the most part, I'm digging this so far. Yeah, definitely one I definitely want to spend time with and just kind of sink it in more, because again, I feel like I need to listen to this quite a few more times in order to kind of get it, shall we say. But for the most part, I'm enjoying what I'm hearing. So if you are familiar with Adrien, let me know your thoughts on this album. And of course, if there's any other Adrien albums that are worth checking out, let me know, because this came out in 1990, I believe, based on what I looked up. So yeah, some good stuff here. Speaking of David Bowie, I actually got two albums from him. I'll talk about this one first. We have Young Americans. This was his follow-up to Diamond Dogs, and this is kind of the first album post his whole glam rock period. So this is where he's going into pretty much a full 180 here, almost, in a sense, and he's going in a more blue-eyed soul, R&B sort of sound, which is kind of interesting. But I think David pulls it out pretty well, I must say. I mean, you have the title track, which is kind of considered a classic in this catalog. And then, of course, you have the other big hit, which is Fame, which is, again, this big funk sort of track. And, of course, you have John Lennon, who actually helps with the lyrics on this one as well, which is kind of cool. But other songs that I really enjoyed was Win. I like the horns on that one. That's a good feel. I like the atmosphere of that one. Fascination's pretty good. Right, You Can Hear Me. It has a cover of Across the Universe by the Beatles, which is probably my least favorite song on the album. But you know, it's David Bowie, he's gonna do it his way, so there's that. But overall, fairly enjoyable album. I really did dig this one quite a bit. Again, probably another album I need to listen to more, but very impressed. And while we're on the topic of David Bowie, I did say I bought two, and the other one was this album right here, and the album's called Heathens. So this is a much later album. I believe this came out in 2002, if I'm not mistaken. And I didn't get a chance to listen to the whole album. I heard maybe the first couple songs, and so far, based on that little piece that I heard, I feel like I'm going to be digging this album quite a bit. Again, I don't have much else to say on it because, again, I only heard the first song, but based on the first song, I feel like it's going to be a very solid album. I'm sure there's going to be some more songs I'm going to like. But of course, let me know your thoughts on this album, of course, in the comments below. Up next, we have Johnny Cash. This one is American 4, The Man Comes Around. Yeah, I bought a Johnny Cash album. I feel like it was only a matter of time before I actually bought something from him. And I saw this in the record store and I'm like, okay, might as well give it a go. Of course, I have a big respect for Johnny Cash. You know, I'm not like the biggest country fan in the world, but, you know, I like the classic guys and the classic artists, shall we say. And yeah, I definitely want to check this album out. This is usually talked very highly of. And of course, it has the song Hurt, which of course is it's a cover from 9 Inch Nails, but that's definitely a song that he really made his own. And I've always liked his version of it. And I didn't hear the full album, but so far I'm digging it. It's kind of it's a sad album, because knowing the circumstances around this recording, but The Man Comes Around was a pretty good opening song. Hurts, of course, I already talked about that. Give My Love to Rose. Quite a bit of covers here. You have Bridge Over Troubled Water from Simon & Garfunkel. Another pretty odd choice was Personal Jesus by Depeche Mode. Kind of an interesting one. Of course, there's other covers like In My Life, Desperado by the Eagles, which Don Henley actually provides some vocals on that track, which is kind of interesting. But overall, based on what I've heard, pretty impressive. I very much like even though Johnny is in his like last months or so, he still sounds very good. So yeah, overall very enjoyable. Who knows, maybe we'll get some more Johnny Cash in the future. We'll see how things go. Moving on to something a bit more heavy, we have Long Cold Winter by Cinderella. Of course, Cinderella are part of the kind of hair metal, glam metal, whatever you want to call it. And I actually did buy their debut not that long ago, maybe a few months ago. And I really enjoyed that one. I think I got last year, maybe? I don't remember. But I saw this in the record store again, and I was like, might as well get this one. So this is their second studio album. And again, I didn't hear the full album yet, but I heard the first half. And so far, again, I need to listen to the first album again. But so far, I think I might be liking this album more than the debut. I don't know, the songs just kind of hit a bit harder, or they kind of resonate a bit quicker, if that makes sense. So the first half you have Bad Seamstress Blues, which kind of starts out and it's kind of more bluesy sort of sound, but then it quickly changes to a more heavier, more quicker song. Then you have Gypsy Road, pretty catchy song. Don't Know What You Got, very good, kind of the ballad. Kind of has like power ballad feel, which is actually shockingly not bad actually. The vocals have this kind of like Brian Johnson sort of sound, but I don't know, they kind of pulled the ballad off fairly well to me, at least. Then you have The Last Mile, and then you have Second Wind, and that's kind of where I cut off. And so yeah, at some point I need to listen to the second half, but so far, very much am impressed with this one so far. Pretty good. So yeah, that's Cinderella. Moving on, this is the fourth album I have bought from this band. We have The Cure, and the album's called The Head on the Door. So I've tipped my toes into The Cure, and I know they're pretty well respected and have a big following, and I've enjoyed what I've heard. Again, I have a couple of their albums so far, and I saw this, and I'm like, I should probably give it a go. And this came out in 1985, and this is part of their more commercial period where they started out as a more gothic rock post-punk band, but now they kind of are going for a more radio friendly sort of sound. And yeah, I haven't heard this album get talked about honestly, but I heard this one and I'm like, oh my god, this is really good. It might possibly be my favorite Cure album I've heard so far, because I don't know, the songs for me on this album, they were kind of quick. They kind of hit me quicker, shall we say. And what I mean by that, like, it kind of, like, I heard the songs, they kind of hit they resonate quicker. That's what I'm trying to say. If you can't tell, I'm recording this in the morning, so I'm a bit all over the place. But that said, like, I pretty much enjoyed every song on here. It starts out really good with In Between Days. Then you have The Blood, 6 Different Ways, the Baby Screams, The Sinking, Screw, Kyoto Song. Like, again, every song on here, I'm just naming a few, but every song just really, really good. Some catchy stuff here, good melodies throughout. Yeah, so I would recommend this one. It's very, very good. Again, I have to re-listen to my Cure collections to kind of gauge it, but so far, as of now, this could possibly be my favorite Cure album. So again, let me know what you all think of this one. Okay, I'm going to keep this one brief, but as of now, I now own every album from this band. We have Fleetwood Mac, and this is their 1995 album called Time. The reason why I'm going to keep this short is because, and I've plugged this many times before, but currently I'm doing a series with my friends Nick, Scott, and Jason, and we're going through the entire Fleetwood Mac catalog. And as of this recording, we have just gotten to Mirage. And so the next one we're going to do is Tango in the Night. So hopefully we'll get that soon. And we're pretty much we're kind of in the last stretch. After Tango in the Night, of course, we have Behind the Mask, Time, and Say You Will. So we're nearly there. So I'm not going to say my thoughts on this album. I did hear this album, and I know the reputation it has. And again, make sure you go to Nick's channel, Townsend505. If I remember, I'll put a link to his channel in the description, and also a link to the playlist to our Fleetwood Mac series. So if you're curious and want to hear our thoughts on these albums, then you can go and check those out. But yeah, I just want to show it because I did buy it this month. So there we go, Fleetwood Mac, Time. Okay, so now we move on to an album that has garnered quite a bit of discussion in recent time, and that album is called The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, of course by Lauryn Hill. Okay, so if you've been living under a rock for the past month, I guess, maybe, I forget when that list came out, but of course Apple Music released their top 100 best albums of all time, and they put this album at number 1. And of course there was a whole uproar being like, oh, this album sucks, it doesn't deserve to be number 1, that whole thing. Okay, little side rant. For one thing, I never take those lists seriously. I feel like people take lists like that way too frickin' seriously. You know, whenever these big lists come out, there's always a slew of people who make their own videos talking about how crap it is. And I'm like, oh my god, just stop wasting your f***ing time on such bullshit. Who f***ing cares? Who f***ing cares for these lists? I swear to god. It's just so stupid to me. And you know, and of course, whatever album is number 1, it has the misfortune of being completely judged. And there's like this onslaught of people who are not a fan of this album, being like just ranting and raving and stuff like that. You know, when an album is number 1, I'm not going to be trashing it because it got number 1, because again, I don't care. I just want to listen to the album how it is. And you know, that list did do something good. It made me buy this album because I was like, you know, I've heard about this album for quite some time, and you know, might as well give it a go and just to see how I feel about it. And again, totally separated from that list. I really dug this album, honestly. You know, it has it does have a hip hop feel that Lauryn Hill's known for, but you know, it's not just a hip hop album. You know, there's bits of soul, there's some R&B, a little bit of funk maybe on certain parts, but for the most part, I would say this is more of an R&B soul album rather than a full-blown hip-hop rap album. There's some rap here and there, but it's not like the main thing, you know. And I always dug Lauryn Hill's vocals. She does have a nice tone, kind of a more lower register, but I kind of dug it. It has a good vibe, I must say. So I did hear the whole album, and again, there's some nice ones like the last ones. X Factor, that's where the soul really kicks in. Doo-Wop, Superstar. The title track is a pretty good song too. Nothing Even Matters. You know, there's a song. There's a song. She does a cover of Can't Take My Eyes Off You by Frankie Valli, and I'm like, yeah, I could have done without that one personally, but for the most part, I dug this album. Now, do I think this is the best album of all time? No. But again, for what it is, I quite liked it. So, there you go. That's my 2 cents on this album here. Now let's move on to something that's very obscure. So the band's called Horses, and this is their self-titled album, and their debut album, and their only album. So this is a case of a one and done band. They released the one album and then they just kind of left. Yeah, I saw this at the record store, and you know, their name Horses kind of, I don't know why, just kind of drew me in. I was like, that seems interesting. So this is a complete blind buy here. So they have the members listed here. You have Chris Harold, Don Johnson, Matt Kelly, Dave Torbert, and Scott Quigley. I don't know if I said any of those names right. So there's really not much information on this band. They're not on Spotify, surprisingly. I just found like this brief article on them. So, you know, a couple articles, and this came out in 1969, I think, maybe 1970. Again, the date's kind of hazy, but from what I gathered, and after listening to this album, they're pretty much this kind of folk rock sort of band. So if you like folk rock, you might dig this one. And you know, for the most part, it's pretty solid. You know, some nice songs. You know, Freight Train, Birdie in a Cage, Round Rabbit Run, Wind, Asia Minor. Don't know what they're insinuating with that, but okay. You know, it's a short album. It's like a half an hour, so doesn't take too much to listen to it. Overall, very solid. Kind of cool I got this one, but you know, it's not really an album I see myself listening to that often. But it's kind of a interesting buy. So if you know this band, again, let me know in the comments and let me know your thoughts on this album. Here's a fun one. We have a collaboration album with Ian Hunter from Moth the Hoople and Mick Ronson, best known for his work with David Bowie. And we have their album, YUI Orta. If you have no idea what that's supposed to mean, it's supposed to be a play on the phrase "why I oughta," you know, that sort of thing, which is kind of funny, I guess. But titles aside, so yeah, this came out in 1990, I think, 1989 maybe, somewhere around that time, and this is kind of them collaborating just to make an album together. And this is kind of cool. I actually quite dug this album, honestly. Some nice songs. I think, you know, Ian's doing most of the vocals and he sounds pretty good here. And I just bought this because I wanted to check out more of Ian's like solo stuff. But you know, you see Mick Ronson here, and I'm like, okay, this should be cool. This should be good, because I think Mick Ronson's a pretty good guitar player. Yes. So yeah, some good songs overall. 13 songs here. You know, there's some songs that I like more than others, but for the most part, it's pretty strong. So yeah, pretty good stuff here. Not much else to say about it, but if you're a big Ian Hunter or Mick Ronson fan, definitely worth checking out. I briefly talked about King Crimson in the beginning, but here we are. We have King Crimson, and this is another album called Starless and Bible Black. So I'm gradually building that King Crimson collection again, and this is another pretty good one here. Of course, this is the period with John Wetton on vocals and bass, Bill Bruford, that whole lineup. David Cross, I'm assuming, still is here on the band. Yeah, very good album here. You have the great Seaver, great opening song. I mean, the guitar work from Robert Fripp, just top notch as always. And you know, I can go through the song listing, but you know, this title track, Fractured, some good instrumental pieces here. And as always, the musicianship is always very cool. Very odd time signatures, but again, it somehow works. You just kind of vibe with it. So yeah, still, I wouldn't say it's like, I don't know. I don't know. I haven't heard every King Crimson album, and so hopefully one day I hope to hear every album and kind of rank them one day. But I don't know where this would rank. It's not my favorite, but it's definitely still a very strong album. And so yeah, there we go. So glad I got that one. Next up, we have the Kinks. We have a somewhat later album. This came out in 1981, I believe, and this is called Give the People What They Want. So I found out about this album because, again, shout out to my friend Nick and Jason. They're doing a series going through the entire Kinks collection, or catalog, I should say, and they talked about this album not that long ago, and I'm like, okay, I'll keep that in mind. And lo and behold, at the record store, they just so happen to buy it, or they happen to have it, and I'm like, why not? Yoink! And here it is. And so, from what I remember in their review, it was kind of somewhat mixed. Some good stuff, but there's some songs they didn't really were particularly big fans of. So I bought it, and just so I can have my thoughts on it. And I like this album. It's pretty strong, pretty good. Again, I wouldn't say it's like my top tier Kinks, but there's some songs I did like. It starts out really good with Around the Dial. Title track's pretty solid too. Yo-Yo, that's kind of a fun one. There's some pretty dark title, but a little bit of abuse. Dark title, but musically it's pretty good. Better Things was a very great closing song. So yeah, there's some songs, some good solid stuff here. But again, I don't love everything on here, but for the most part, pretty solid. So yeah, if you're a Kinks fan, again, let me know your thoughts. Next up, we have the self-titled debut album of the band Spirit. Pretty cool album cover, I must say, pretty unique. So Spirit, I have heard of for quite some time. I hear great things about them. I actually did hear of them. The reason why I heard of them the first time was, there was that whole Led Zeppelin, copying one of their songs, and from what I remember, I think that was dismissed. But the song in question is actually on this album. It was called Taurus, and I'll give my thoughts on that in a sec. But that's kind of how I heard of Spirit. But over the years, I've heard people talk about them and some good stuff. I decided to start with their debut album because why not? And it's a very interesting album. It's a blend of many genres. You have psychedelic rock, folk, jazz, garage rock even maybe. So yeah, it's a very interesting combination. And musically it's very good. Starts out with Fresh Garbage. There's that. Uncle Jack's pretty good. And the song Taurus, the song that's part of that whole lawsuit thing, for what it is, I think it's very nice. It has a cool atmosphere. And the guitar melody does have a sort of, I could kind of hear it a little bit, but I wouldn't say it's the exact same at all. Maybe the beginning has a similar chord progression, but kind of deviates after that. But overall, still very solid stuff. But yeah, like I said, very cool. Definitely want to check out more because I know they have another album. I forgot the name of it, but has something Dr. Sardonicus or something like that. If I'm not mistaken, I heard that's really good. So probably will try to reach out for that one next. But overall, for a first time getting to Spirit, very impressed. And now we have a band I have not talked about in quite some time, and that's Youtu, and this is their album, October. Good thing this is called October because that was the month I was born. And you're probably wondering why the sticker is still on it. Well, I've been meaning to replace the case because it is broken. So I do need to replace the front part, the cover, the front, this piece at some points. But again, I hadn't had the time. But I definitely wanted to get more Youtu. Again, it's been a long time. And I think this is their second album, if I remember correctly. And yeah, this is another really good album. It starts out with Gloria, great song. I Fall Down is really great. Tomorrow, the title track's pretty solid. Is That All? Yeah, very solid stuff. So very strong album. I still need to get their debut album. I don't have that one yet, so I can't really compare it. But still, some good musicianship. Again, you have the Edge. Have some really cool guitar tones. This is kind of when they were still kind of in that post-punk sort of vein before they kind of deviate from that. But overall, very good album, really enjoyable. Now we have a compilation album, and this is The Who, and this is The Who on tour, Magic Bus. Now I have heard this album before, and my first ever collaboration with Scott and Nick was when we ranked The Who, well, a good chunk of The Who catalog, and we did like a whole anniversary a year later, and we included this album. I guess I'll get my thoughts out of the way. It's not my favorite Who release, honestly. It's kind of near the bottom if I were to include it in like the main catalog. I'm not a huge fan of the first song, Disguises. I think it has like steampunk sounds, and I'm like, kind of a bit overkill. And then there's some repeat songs from a quick one, like Run Run Run, and you have a couple repeats from the Who Sell Out, like Our Love Was. But there's some other songs that weren't on albums that I do like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Magic Bus. I do prefer the Live at Leeds version personally, but the studio version's pretty good. Doctor, and then you have Pictures of Lily, which is a great one. And the whole title kind of bugs me too, because it's called The Who on Tour, and so when you read the title you think you're gonna get a live album, but nope, it's just a studio album. Well, a studio compilation album. Yeah, the album cover's pretty cool too. I think it looks kind of fun, kind of psychedelic. But overall, not my favorite Who release, but I was at the record store and it was pretty cheap, so why the hell not? So there you go. And the final CD I have today, and it's by Frank Zappa. I know it's been a while, but this album is called The Grand Wazoo. This came out in 1972, and before I had only two. I had his first album with the Mothers of Invention called Freak Out, and I wasn't really that enamored with it. But then I also bought Hot Rats, and that was like a big 180, like, oh, I like that. Because that was when he was in more progressive rock, jazz fusion sort of thing. And this album is another part of that period of his. So again, 1972, again, kind of in the same vein as Hot Rats, has a very jazz fusion sound, and in some progressive rock as well. And again, I really dig this. I think the musicianship on here is very great. Great guitar work from Frank. I definitely get why people say he's a very great guitar player. Like, his playing on here is really great. Then he has some horns on here, which is kind of cool. I like the horns on here. For the most part, it is largely instrumental. There's really barely any vocals on this. You'll hear some vocals sometimes, but for the most part, it's an instrumental album. And, for jazz fusion, that's to be expected. But again, I don't have much to say on it, but again, very great stuff. And I definitely really do want to check out more Frank Zappa. Just a very fascinating character, and just the music. I just want to kind of dive deep, at one point. But, baby steps. But overall, a lot of positive things to say about The Grand Wazoo. Bryer from the future here. So I'm currently editing the video when I realized I completely missed a CD. I still bought 17 in total, but there was just one that got separated and I completely forgot about it until now. So I'm just gonna put it right here. So this is the CD right here. We have Buffalo Springfield, and the album's called Last Time Around. It's their third and final studio album. And now I have all three, because I do have the other two. And yep, definitely the weakest of the three. There's some decent songs here, but there's a good chunk of this that's just it's okay. But there's one song in particular that I just flat out don't like, and that is Carefree Country Day. Just a lame, pathetic excuse of a country song. It wasn't even sung by any of the members, which is, again, kind of why. But other than that, again, I got it because me, Nick, and Jason just finished a series talking about Buffalo Springfield, and just had to get it just for the
series sake, and you know, just why not conclude the trilogy. Again, it's okay, but definitely weak compared to the other two. That's all I gotta say about it. So without further ado, let's just conclude the video.
And there you have it. That's every CD I acquired throughout the month of June. So hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully you had fun like I did here. And as always, if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe if you are new. And I said this multiple times in the video, but in the comments below, let me know your thoughts on any of the CDs that I showed in this video. And I look forward to knowing what your thoughts are. And of course, you can also let me know what you bought this month as well. Well, hopefully the next video won't take as long, but until then, I'll see you in the next video. So take care and goodbye for now.